Hi guys, welcome to episode 78 of my Warhammer Conquest review series. This week I'll be reviewing issue 78. And in this issue we get something pretty amazing. We get a huge base. I feel like such a numpty because I've been thinking, oh yeah, there'll be 4 bits of the tank in each issue, and last issue I'm like, yeah, well, you know, we can start building the tank next issue when we get the whole tank, and the 4th bit of the tank is the base. That's it. There's nothing else. That's the whole shtick, just the base. So I could have built the tank last week, which makes me a bit sad. But I'm going to get on to building my tank when I finish this episode. It's a nifty base. It has a little turny bit. I'm just going to twist it off because you don't see it. It's under the thing. There's no need to worry about the spurs. But you stick it in together like that, and the whole thing goes roundy round. And it sticks on, a bit of it sticks on the base, a bit of it sticks on the tank. It holds up enough, and you can turn the tank on the base. I'm not sure why, because, you know, you can just turn the base. It is also roundy round. It's a nice big base. It's a bit thin, a bit flexible, but it's going to sit under a massive tank, so not a problem. Oh, you gotta love the weird things. Anyway, this is the last of the repulsor issues. Repulsor tank. Oh, sorry, just not the base. Repulsor tank part 4, as it says, and yeah, part 4. Oh, but. That aside, let's get into the issue. Right, so what do we got? We got something in my eye. Ow. Right. Got a nice piece of artwork on the beginning. And then signed by Ian, our spiritual liege. And straight into the first page with a quite old-fashioned piece of artwork for the Inquisition. You can usually spot the old-fashioned bits. They're drawn a lot more messily, or painted a lot more messily. They're a lot less pristine and precise, and they don't trying to look realistic. A lot of that was down to a stylistic choice. Some of it was down to the fact that it was just the preferred art style of the artists involved. It kind of, they were often trying to sort of give an impression of ancient pieces of art and stuff like that, rather than pristine technical drawings. I always thought the idea there was to try and keep the magazine, not the magazine, try and keep the, to try and then weight to the history, try and keep the history of the Imperium looking historic rather than being a modern thing. So you'd have these ancient pictures of warriors that have been around for thousands of years painted in Baroque styles rather than technical schematical readouts, or rather than just. But go straight into the Inquisition. Imperial agents, the Inquisition. And they've covered the O quite conveniently, so it looks like it says the Inquisition. So that helps, guys. So that's good. And they've misspelled Inquisition. One issue. Okay, we can see on the front here, the word Inquisition is spelt, where are we? I-N-Q-U-I-S. And we can see here that it's spelt I-N-Q-U-S. So the Inquisition, as opposed to the Inquisition. What's an issue? That's a pretty big, it's in the title, guys, come on. Oh dear. I wonder if maybe that big I was supposed to be in the middle, not at the end. Oh well. The Imperium stands on the brink of destruction, surrounded on all sides by unknowable threats, and tempted to ruin by the lure of forbidden knowledge. Mankind is only one mistake away from destruction. This fate will only be avoided, I'm going to stop doing the silly voice now, will only be avoided through the eternal vigilance of the Inquisition. Basically, the Inquisition are the secret police of the Imperium, but the same, you know, and well, they're a combination of the secret police, MI5, CIA, and all the positives and negatives of that. They're sort of fighting a secret war against the worst enemies of the Imperium, but at the same time they are a rule and a law unto themselves, and often do things so terrible that it makes you question whether or not they should actually be in existence, or whether or not it wouldn't be easier just to let the demons take over, and less demonic. But all in all, they're generally a force for good. There are several types of Inquisition. The three main ones are Ordo Hereticus, Ordos Hereticus, Ordos Xenos, and Ordos Malleus, which is anti-heretics, so that's against psychers, witchers, and general traitors. Ordo Xenos, which is against aliens, and Ordo Malleus, which is against demons, chaos cults, and things like that. But there are hundreds of little sub-factions as well. Milk is good for you, bones. I'm just going to read a bit here. When it comes to overseeing the workings of the Imperium, the Inquisition is by far the most powerful organisation. Its agents, the Inquisitors, are feared and respected in equal measure. Inquisitors are seen as almost mythical beings who descend from on high to pass judgment upon mutants, heretics, and traitors alike. Few citizens are brave enough to meet an Inquisitor's steely gaze, for they can call for death and destruction on a terrible scale. Inquisitors are probably the most likely Imperial force you're going to see calling for an exterminatus of a world. And when they do, they don't do it lightly, although some are a bit trigger happy. But usually it's when a world is so tainted and corrupt that it's better off destroying it to deny its resources to an enemy than recapturing it. And you can never recapture it. They might call, the Order Xenos might call down a bombardment or a planetary annihilation bomb or chemical weapons or whatever they've got in order to destroy a world taken over by Tyranids. Order Malleus might do it for demons. Often, if it's just rebels and heretics, you're not going to see it destroyed, but rather taken back. But if they are too deeply dug in, or there's chance of them spreading their rebellion to other worlds, even the Order Hereticus may call for an exterminatus on a world. It is mostly considered the last resort, but often the last resort is the first response with some of the nasty stuff out there. Inquisition acts as a left hand of the Emperor. Bit of a explanation. The term left hand and right hand of emperors and kings and that tended to indicate the idea that left hand was bad and right hand was good. Hence left hand was referred to as sinister. Anything going left was considered to be going sinister in heraldry or anything like that. I've just realised it's not flat. You can actually, the reason you turn it is you can have it facing up and facing down. Random input there. Hence the left hand was considered to be the secret agents, the secret police, assassins and executioners, whereas the right hand would be those who operate in the light and are good and happy and wonderful. But yeah, so they're the left hand. There was a lot of racism against left-handed people, and then ginger people. It's almost as if when there weren't other races to be racist against, people looked for things to be racist against in the same race. It's not really racism, obviously, but a lot of discrimination. It's really weird. It's really weird stuff in history. Anyway, the left hand of the Emperor can call upon or cast judgment on any Imperial citizen or organisation, regardless of rank, class, or power. All from lowly clerks to entire Space Marine chapters are subject to the authority of the Inquisition, and they will do anything to ensure the survival of the Imperium. It's worth noting there have been several cases when the Imperium have gone, you are subject to our rule, you should do what we say, and Space Marine chapters have gone, fuck off. up to and including a point where the Inquisition fought in the Wars of Armageddon. Afterwards, they executed a lot of the people. The Space Force were very unhappy about that and basically said, no, we're not letting you execute these people. So the Inquisition turned around and said, oh, you're all mutants and heretics. We're going to get you. They took a huge fleet all the way to Fang and got the shit pretty roundly kicked out of them, involving a massive fight with them calling in huge legions and Fang going, and Space Force going, we're the Space Force, this is Fang, good luck, and hurting them. And it was only ended peacefully when so much noise was made that Bjorn the Fell Hand woke up. And Bjorn the Fell Hand had then stormed his way to the thing and said, stop fucking mucking about, you bloody stupid children. I was there when the Emperor was alive. Get off my lawn, you damn kids. Mostly because he got woke up and he's just a grumpy man, or Dreadnought. So, yeah, the Inquisition are not afraid to go up against even founding chapters if they believe they're in the right, and it has happened on several occasions. There are also several Space Marine chapters who have dark secrets that they're trying to keep from the Inquisition. The most notable of which being the Dark Angels and the Space Force, with the Dark Angels having heresy and treachery in their past, and the Space Force having a level of mutation that, whilst acceptable to the Emperor, because the Emperor knew full well about it, wouldn't have been acceptable to the Inquisition, or wouldn't be acceptable to the Inquisition. Anyway, they even have the power to destroy whole worlds, enacting a dire judgment known as the Exterminators. Inquisitors understand the threats mankind face and know that morality and compassion are luxuries the Imperium cannot afford in the Dark Ages, or in this Dark Age. It's worth knowing that all the forbidden books, all the forbidden texts, all that kind of stuff is stuff that the Inquisitors have access to. So they are one of the few parts of the Imperium that actually has something close to a full picture of what's going on, at which point they tend to stop fucking about and just kill and blow things up and twist and manipulate and do whatever they can, because unlike other areas of the Imperium or other factions of the Imperium, they know truly what's at stake and what can go wrong. They know that one demon incursion can taint an entire world permanently. And so, you have to wipe out an entire world just to save the billions of worlds around it and things like that. We've got some nice pictures here, some actually quite old models. The Inquisitors in various forms, some of them having power armor, some of them not. And again, it goes through the three main types here. The Ordo Malleus, which is tasked with protecting the Imperium from demonic threats and has the largest military force of any Ordo. They are also, they are able to call upon the services of the legendary Grey Knights to purge demonic forces. The Ordo Malleus have their own Space Marine chapter, basically, and it's the most well-equipped Space Marine chapter out there. We have not seen Primaris Grey Knights yet. I don't know if we ever will. The thing about the Grey Knights is they have the most stable gene seed and the least likely to fall or be twisted or corrupted by chaos. Rumour has it, and it's rumour that's confirmed in pieces in some of the Horus Heresy books. The gene seed from the Grey Knights was made up of the loyalist remnants of traitor chapters. People Marines who, when faced with massive pressure to convert, surrounded by corruption on all sides, and basically told convert or die, chose to die, but somehow managed to escape. If you read The Flight of the Eisenstein, at the end of it, there's several hints and ideas that Malkador the Stigilite, who was the Emperor's basically second in command, or human second in command, put the Ordo Malleus and the Inquisition together primarily to prevent, to hunt down, kill and prevent chaos reoccurring. Prior to that, anybody who was just a traitor got killed by the Marines. The idea of treason wasn't really one out there. You were an enemy of the Imperium or you were its friend. There have been some uprisings. after people have sworn loyalty, but when it's that close to being conquered, it's not really considered treason because they're still a conquered people. But anyway, then we've got the Order Hereticus. They're responsible for rooting out heresy within the Imperium and combating psychers. Their agents often, it is worth noting, there is a lot of crossover between Hereticus, Malleus, and even Xenos, in the some psychers commune with demons, therefore the Malleus would come in it. Some psychers are part of witch cults and cults of chaos. Again, the Malleus would then come in, but a lot of the time it just gets taken care of by whichever Inquisitor discovers it. If an Ordo Xenos discovers a demon incursion, he's not just going, oh, it's not my problem, and walk off. He's going to deal with it. And if an Ordo Malleus discovers aliens, he's going to kill them just as he would kill anything else. But anyway, the Order Hereticus are responsible for rooting out heresy within the Imperium and combating psychers. Their agents often work undercover, gathering evidence of betrayal heretical behaviour before unleashing their own brand of fiery judgment. And the Order Xenos works to protect humanity from the plots and schemes of the alien, as well as investigating and cataloguing new species and their technology. It is worth noting that they don't always kill aliens. Some aliens are considered harmless, other aliens are considered not worth worrying about yet, or too much hassle to destroy outright. One of those races was the Tau. They were small and harmless, and then 5 minutes later they had advanced tech. The Ordo Xenos really dropped the ball on that one. Should have wiped out the Tau when they had a chance, but they didn't, and so now we've got a nice, cool new faction with a nifty new aesthetic. Well, newish faction. We've got a cool faction with a nice, different aesthetic. A lot of people complain about the Tau, saying they don't look like they fit in because they're very manga. That's kind of the point. They're meant to be aliens and not look like they fit in. Anyway, should mankind be threatened, the Ordo Xenos are able to call upon the services of the Death Watch. The Death Watch is, which is we've gone through before, but I'll go through it again. They're basically, Marines are called from their chapters. They serve them the Death Watch under the Ordo Xenos, and they learn specialist tactics for fighting aliens and general tactics that allow them to adapt to fight aliens. Because obviously, each new species of alien is going to be very different from the previous species, so you need to learn adaptable tactics. After they've served a tour in the Order Xenos' Death Watch, they then return. It's worth noting that the Ordo Xenos, the Ordo Malleus, and the Ordo Hereticus all have access to well, first off, they have access to anything they want. They can second entire Space Marine chapters, Imperial Guard companies, but the Inquisition has inquisitional stormtroopers. They basically have squads of exceptionally well equipped Imperial Guards. They're equivalent to Imperial Guard stormtroopers. Almost every Inquisitorial faction has access to them. They vary from Imperial Guard in that they have various things done to them to make them less corruptible, and they're subject to mind wipes the same way that, some of them are subject to mind wipes in the same way that the Grey Knights are, so that they don't know enough to then go corrupt themselves. It's also not uncommon for those stormtroopers to then ascend to the ranks of the Inquisition themselves, because if they've dealt with a lot of it and they've handled it well and the Inquisitors see that, it's a great way for them to call on. But other than that, Inquisitors can come from anywhere and be recruited by anyone. It's very common for an Inquisitor to recruit a crew of people to do his work for him, a bunch of specialists, and then it's not uncommon for one of those specialists to then become the Inquisitor's personal protege and rise to the ranks of the Inquisition. It's not uncommon for them to be found in the Imperial Guard. It's not uncommon for Space Marines to actually become Inquisitors if they encounter enough evil and nastiness, and there's a reason for them not to go back to their chapter. They might start heading up inquisitorial teams themselves if that's the best way they can serve the Imperium. It's got a thing on Inquisitors here. I'll quickly go through that. Individual Inquisitors are as varied in appearance and personality as the many threats they face. They range in age from young, energetic zealots to jaded cynical veterans. Some wear elaborate robes and symbols of their allegiance, while others prefer plain practical gear. Inquisitors often carry a wide range of exotic, powerful weapons some even wield devices taken from defeated foes, including alien guns and demonic possessed swords. And yes, that has led to Inquisitors becoming corrupted and worshipping chaos and being hunted down as demons. It's worth noting that there is actually historical precedent for that. There was a gentleman in England whose name I forget, who was the witch finder general, and it was rumoured that he could sniff witches out, and he eventually got burnt at the stake for being a witch, because his ability to find witches was so uncanny, it must have been magic. The survival of the Imperium is the only goal that drives the Inquisitor forward. Their ruthlessness in pursuit of this objective is so zealous that it is greater than the faith of even the most devout member of the ecclesiarchy. The Inquisitor is the judge of absolute truth. They're very, very extreme, and they don't fuck about because they can't afford to. Next, we've got the Officio Assassinorum. It's another branch of the Imperium. The Officio Assassinorum are basically the assassins. There are several houses of assassins. There are 4 main ones, but again, there are several different ones. I'm just going to read this bit. Some threats of the Imperium cannot be dealt with by an army, but need a more targeted approach. In these situations, the Officio Assassinorum services may be required. These merciless killers are capable of slaying any individual, no matter how well protected they may be. There's several types of assassins. So there are like the Inquisitors, because they're fairly independent. There are a lot of specialist and weird assassin types, but the four main types that you get, and certainly the 4 main types that you can buy models for and play, are the Calidus, the Eversword, the Vindicate, and the Klexus. The Calidus are shape-changing assassins. The Calidus Temple trains assassins who are masters of disguise. Through genetic engineering and medical technology, they can reshape their bodies to take the identities of others. I'm not sure what the current rules were, but under the old rules, you could basically pick a non-character model in your opponent's unit, take it off the board, and in its place put in your Calidus Assassin and go, surprise! And stab people through their armour with your phase sword. It says phase sword here. It should be noted that previously it was described as a Catan phase sword and was actually a stolen bit of Necrotech. So that's cool. They're well equipped. They have a neural shredder, which is what it says. It fires stuff which basically destroys the brains of people. Most of the stuff is designed to bypass or get through armor in one shot. They can't take the risk of missing because they're in the middle of the enemy and there's a good chance they get ganged up and killed. There's the Eversword. Everswords are super soldiers, but in another way. Unlike the Space Marines, they're not meant to fight well. They're just meant to be extreme savage animals that destroy everything in their path, and then get shut down and put in a freezer, which is where they stay until the next thing. They're in a freezer, they come out, destroy, go back in the freezer. They're a bit more mentally like Thunder Warriors, and they're berserk lunatics. They're not big like Space Marines, but they're pumped full of a lot of drugs. The Eversword is perhaps the most terrifying weapon of the Officio Assassinorum. These assassins are pumped with stimulants and turn them into murderous killing machines. It doesn't say here, but they also supposedly have their muscles replaced with muscle cords and loads of other weird stuff done to them. Basically, they've got a lifespan of maybe a few years, which is another reason they're kept in cryogenic units. And they're taken out, deployed, kill something, and maybe around there for a few hours to a few days, and then are put back because eventually all the drugs that make them unstoppable will kill them. unlike Space Marines are supposed to be very strong but last for centuries, these guys are supposed to be very strong and burn out. They have a Neuro Sword, a Neuro Gauntlet, a Power Sword, and an Executioner Pistol, which are all nasty things. Next, you've got the Vindicare. It's actually my favourite. Not because of the backstory. I think they're all equally cool because I found them the most adaptable when I used them in my Imperial Guard army. The Vindicare Assassins are cold, calculating killers. As you can see from the big long rifle, they are super snipers. That eliminate targets with casual ease. They are capable of putting a bullet between the eyes of any mark from impossible ranges. They're patient too. They can occupy a firing position for weeks at a time, waiting for the best possible opportunity before taking their one and usually only one shot. They have Exodus Rifle, which is a very powerful long-range rifle, Exodus Ammunition, an Exodus Pistol, and a Vindicare Spy Mask. The mask covers their face, but also allows them an additional sensory perceptions and things like that. Infrared, ultraviolet. The pistol is a big, powerful pistol. The rifle is a big, powerful, very long-range rifle. The most interesting thing tends to be the Exodus ammunition, because it has multiple types of ammunition. It has ammunition that goes through shields, ammunition that goes through armor, and I think ammunition that explodes and does a lot of damage, so that they can cater their kill to the specific opponent. This makes them more expensive, but also makes them incredibly flexible, so it allows you to do a lot of different stuff, which is quite cool. Then finally, we've got the Colexus. The Colexus Temple specializes in eliminating psychers. Their assassins have no presence in the warp. A rare gift that gives them the ability to neutralize the abilities of psychers. They wear helmets that include an Animus Speculum, the big weird head thing that you can see there. That focuses their strange ability into a narrow beam capable of melting the brain of their target and leaving nothing but a withered, blasted husk. They have the Animus Speculum, the Psycho Grenade, and the Ethereum. I don't know what the Ethereum is, it doesn't show there. I was assuming that was the warp. But basically they're psychic nulls. I've seen them described as two different things. Primarily here as psychic nulls, but I've also seen them described as black holes in the warp, moving beyond just not being there to being such a dark and black vacuum that it actually destroys warp around it. Psychic nulls can just make psychers uncomfortable and shut down abilities. Some of the descriptions I've seen for the Collectors have them, like I say, be to the point where it actually hurts psychers to be around them before they're trained, and then when you add that ability, it means that you're just walking into a room. Just walking into a room can knock down a psyker. So that's pretty cool. Sorry, little time. They're also really useful against a lot of specialist units. Not sure how they work against Tyranids, but I'm sure they work well. Next, Imperial Agents. The Sisters of Silence. Now, the Sisters of Silence are actually a forerunner to the Collector's Assassins, as well as potentially being a forerunner to the Sisters of Battle. The Sisters of Silence are psychic nulls that accompany the Emperor. They don't shut down his powers, but they will shut down powers of others. Not sure how that works. Silence is the hand of the Emperor's justice. No war cry comes from the throat of the Emperor's witch seekers. Only a roar of flames and the crack boom of the holy bolter accompany their eternal hunt for untrained psychers, who could bring the Imperium to danger. Basically, the Emperor did know about the war, but chose not to tell people, and his Sisters of Silence dealt with that for him. They're forerunners of the Inquisition, they're forerunners of the Collector's Assassins, they're forerunners of the Sisters of Battle. They do a lot of stuff. They don't speak ever, and they just march forward scarily, shutting down psychers. They were present at the Battle of Prospero, where their presence turned the tide by shutting down the Emperor's children, the Thousand Sons. psychers, and without their psychic powers, they weren't any match for the Space Wolves, who didn't use psychic powers all the time and channeled what psychic abilities they had primarily into being bigger and badder warriors. They would have shut down, I imagine, the Rune Priests as well, but I'm not 100% sure on that. I think they worked specifically around the Rune Priests. Anyway, the Sisters of... I'm going to read the blurb here. The mysterious Sisters of Silence are an all-female order utterly devoted to the Emperor. Of all the Imperial's warriors, they and the Custodian Guard are the only ones who may walk freely amidst the Emperor's vaults. Known as the Null Maidens, the Sisters of Silence are witch hunters supreme. Each is psychically untouchable and completely immune to mental attack, with no presence at all in the mirror dimension known as the Warp. To normal humans, the Null Maidens are unsettling. To psychers, they are utterly repulsive and terrifying. Their lack of warp presence makes them voids of darkness that drains the soul as a black hole devours light. There you go. You got, again, it's not just that they have no presence, it's a little bit more than that. When a sister becomes a full member, they must swear the oath of tranquility. In the presence of the Emperor, from this moment, they will speak only through their actions. They communicate through a system of hand signals known as the Thought Mark. It is their duty to hunt down and capture rogue psychers. It's worth noting, the Emperor wasn't against psychers in general. He was against psychers who would go nuts and summon demons and do bad things. He employed psychers in the ships to guard the ships. He had the Malcador, the Stigilite, who was a powerful psyker. He had Magnus, who was a psyker. So he did use psychers. He just was more than aware that they could be dangerous as well as helpful. So that's pretty cool. Here we've got the war gear. So we've got the Null Maidens wear a helmet and mask that covers their mouths. The Executioner Great Blade. Vigilator squads wield these two-handed swords. Shoulder guards. The Null Maiden's armor features the Imperial symbol. And then we've got the golden armor. The Null Maiden cadre usually incorporates gold into their armor in honor of the Emperor. And they've got robes and gems and stuff like that. So they look scary and they look badass. Here we've got some awesome pictures of all the Imperial agents. If you're wondering what that big hat's about, it's the kind of hat that witch hunters in the olden days wore. It's a very puritanical hat. You'll see some of it in things like the Pilgrims and that. In American thing, it is worth noting that's because the Pilgrims were exactly the kind of people who used to accuse people of witchcraft and burn them at the stake. The Salem witch trials were not out of character for that group of people. They believed in witches and they believed that you had to set fire to them. You then got the Officio Assassinorum, looking scary and dark, and the Sisters of Silence, looking scary and bright. So there's a lot of really cool stuff there. Worth noting, the Sisters of Silence are available 30k. You can use them in 40k, but I'm not sure how in or out of place they would be, or whether or not they just stay in. I mean, I think there might be some left because they're part of the Custodes, or because they were aligned heavily with the Custodes. Oh, sorry. And it may well be that, like the Custodes, they've just been guarding the Emperor for the past few hundred years and ready to start coming out again. But that's they're still going to be a rare sight on the battlefield. Not that they have to be a rare sight on the tabletop. Then we've got Demons of Nurgle, Fursulent Gnarlmaws. Wherever the plague god's power is strong, the earth begins to sprout with fresh life. As Nurgle's garden breaches the reality. Groves of Fursulent Gnarlmaws are often the first warp spawn plants to emerge. So that's cool. Nurgle's always seeking to expand his realm into the galaxy, corrupting as many worlds in real space as possible. Wherever Nurgle's demonic legions tread, disease and destruction always follow. As the death and decay spread, the veil between the warp and reality begins to break down. When this happens, the cursed demonic life of Nurgle's garden begins to bleed into the reality. Often plants take root. A Fursulent Gnarlmaw grows quickly wherever the sons of Nurgle gather in large numbers. The shoots of these cursed trees begin to push their way through the blighted soil. When fully grown, Warp twisted and filth encrusted bells are hung from the branches. Fleshy growths cover them, belching forth clouds of demonic spores into the air. Diseased blossoms fall from their slime slick boughs to pool on the maggot churned earth at the base of their twisted, tooth filled trunks. So basically, rotten trees covered in teeth. But there you can see, it is actually a model you can buy. The boons of demons. The Servant of Nurgles are encouraged by the presence of the Festament Narmor, for it is a sure sign that Nurgles are in power. Chimes that hang from the tree's branches urge Nurgles demons onward to battle. So it's pretty cool. To stray within a grove of these foul plants is to invite agonizing death. Those who come too close find their breath stolen away as their armor and eventually lungs clogged with pestilent spores. So they're nasty and ambitious. Quick little side note: you see a lot of bells on this and on the Skaven in Age of Sigmar. The reason for that is because bells were often used as a warning of disease. If a town carried a plague, they'd ring bells and they'd yell the word unclean. Lepers who had the disease called leprosy, which is a nasty disease which causes limbs to rot and bits of you to drop off, would go around in all white robes ringing a bell and yelling unclean. They'd stay away from villages, but it was often understood that as they approached a village, you'd go out to somewhere obvious, leave some food, maybe some clothes and that, and then you'd retreat back so that they'd be able to live until live the rest of their lives in their leprous state until eventually either leprosy or just ill health killed them. But they would basically have big bells that they'd ring to warn people of their presence, so they stayed away from them. Leprosy is a horrific and terrifying disease because it literally rots you alive. Particularly to somebody of the Middle Ages, it was absolutely terrifying. But because of those bells, because of the implied warnings and the fact that bells are tied in with disease and pestilence, particularly in the European dark and medieval times, the Dark Ages and the Middle Ages, GW has incorporated bells heavily into that. They also have a sort of religious significance, which also kind of brings a twisted weirdness to it as well. So that's cool. The Festament Narmors have a strong warp aura. Followers of Nurgle use this power to help summon demons. So the tree can help you summon demons, it can kill your enemies, and it can boost your troops. It has rules which which represent this on the tabletop, so it is a fairly nice or nasty piece of scenery. Next, we've got the Space Marine Impulsor. Basically, it tells us about the Impulsor. Which is separate from the Repulsor. We've had a big thing on the Repulsor previously. Where are we? There's the front page. Just make sure I'm getting that right. Nope. Yeah, the Repulsor tank and the Repulsor data sheet. The Impulsor is a lightly armored but fast moving. The Impulsor transport is designed to move small Primaris units of Space Marines across difficult terrain. Bit more like a Rhino. Crew 2 Primaris Space Marines, armament 2 Stormbolters, with optional Ironet Hail Heavy Stubber, 2 Fragstorm Grenade Launchers, 1 Bellicatus Missile Array, 1 Iron Hail Sky Talon Array. As we can see again, a lot of the new and a lot of the Primaris tanks are coming with anti-aircraft abilities. It's got propulsion vector thrusters and anti-gravity repulsion plates, and a shield dome orbital comms array. It's a recon transport vehicle. It doesn't say how many guys it'll take. The rear of the vehicle is open top, allowing a squad of Primaris Marines to swiftly board and disembark. In order to support the squad aboard, the Impulsor can be fitted with a wide range of different weapons for troops expected to receive heavy. For those troops expecting to receive heavy fire as they disembark, the vehicle can mount a small shield dome at top hull that covers it in a shimmering energy field. So basically, also recon missions are helped by the deployment of powerful Auspex rays and Boxcasters. So this is a cool transport vehicle. It's a bit more of a Vanguard transport vehicle, but it is pretty kick-ass. And this came out with the recent Vanguard releases. So this is all planned, but you can see there it's lighter. It's a little weirder. It's not as square as the Repulsor, and it carries troops. But again, it's very much aimed at the whole Vanguard thing. There's literally now a whole Vanguard army. The Primaris Space Marines, true to their kind of philosophy of specialization within units, have an entire Vanguard army or a basic Primaris army. Impulsors are heavily used by Vanguard forces to get them in position to deliver killing blows. They're occasionally used in a similar to Rhino APC, either as part of a larger column or to rapidly outflank enemy forces. The Impulsor, however, has a benefit of being able to cross trench lines, fast-flowing rivers, toxic industrial spills, and the like, because it doesn't touch them. So that's pretty cool. Next, we have the Storm Raven gunship. They are jamming a lot of individual things into this. I think this one's going to take a little longer than normal, but there is a lot of stuff in this one. The Storm Raven gunships are more like flying tanks than normal dropships. You can see they're very bulky, and originally they were, I always feel like they were designed to be affordable versions of the Thunderhawk gunship. They were small, they could carry a single unit as opposed to dozens of units, and they were just nasty and vicious looking things. Nice. I like the aesthetic, but pretty much a kind of a flying Land Raider. Despite their bulk, they're fast and maneuverable. They are as fast and maneuverable as they are resilient. They are capable of carrying troops and other heavy equipment to a designated drop zone and then providing air cover as their cargo advances on their objectives. Storm Raiders boast an incredible firepower and a substantial transport capacity. The gunship troops transport base are large enough to carry even gigantic Centurion warsuits, although probably not Primaris, I'm guessing. Which is a bit weird. Or even jump out wearing assault marines. Meanwhile, the Storm Raven's cargo grapple can bear a dreadnought straight into the heat of battle. You can either put guys in it, or you can literally hang a dreadnought from the back of it and it just lands, drops the dreadnought off and walks off, which is actually really nifty. They're not bad flyers, they're not bad fighters, they're heavily armed. It's a lot of points, because again, like the Land Raider, it fulfills the role of being an amazing transport and an amazing battle vehicle, and you're paying for both. I tend to go for one or the other just because I find going for something that's a jack of all trades means that you always end up with a large amount of points that you're not spending. The fact that it's a transport is great, but if you're using it as a tank, you're not using it as transport points. And if you're using it as a transport, you're moving very quickly and you're probably not going to get to fire all the weapons, so you're not really using it as a... You're not really using it as a tank either. So you have to weigh that up, but it is a big, large, chunky, and frankly beautiful transport. You've got technical pictures on the side show you there. It is a nasty, meaty fella, and really, you're not going to do badly if you have one in your army. It's a bit unwieldy looking because it has a whole all the transport stuff at the front and all the engines at the back on the thin bit. That's to allow space for it to transport the dreadnought if it wants, but they are pretty awesome. Worth noting, that's a Grey Knight one there, so it ties back to the Inquisitors. Each Storm Marine pilot has a crew of 2, 1 Tech Marine pilot and 1 Tech Marine gunner. They work in tandem to deploy the vehicle firepower to best effect. So yeah, very nasty, very cool. Next, we've got Domains, Macragge, jewel at the heart of the Empire of Ultramar. Macragge is the homeworld of the Ultramarines and basically the capital of a mini empire. Each of the Primarchs kind of had their own specialization. Horus was meant to be the perfect war master, whereas Guilliman was meant to be the perfect empire builder. And you might think they're both the same thing, but it's actually very different. Conquering worlds and nations is one thing. Keeping them and holding them and incorporating them permanently into your empire so that they want to stay is something completely different, as many people have found over the centuries. It goes on here to, it goes on here to say, in some ways Macragge is similar to Terra. The gravity on the planet's surface is almost identical and the days are a similar length. Where Terra has been scarred by planet-wide construction over, Macragge remains free of pollution. Macragge's continents are covered in farmland, population centres, military training schools and other seats of learning, manufacturers and mighty fortresses. So while Earth had to be turned into a massive centre for war machines to happen, Macragge is kind of the ideal that Earth wishes it was but can't be in order to run a world. It's basically it's one of the most well protected and well known worlds in the Imperium. It has been attacked. During the opening days of the 13th Black Crusade, the Black Legion invaded Ultramar and landed on Macragge. As battle raged across the service, the Primarch Robert Guilliman was resurrected. He rose to lead the warriors of Ultramar to a crushing victory over the heretic Astartes forces. So that's pretty cool. I'm not going to go into too much detail on that because there's a lot of cool stuff to read, but basically he was stabbed by a knife that was a demon blade or a poison demon blade, and it took centuries to almost heal, and even then it hasn't really healed. He's locked up in armor that basically keeps him alive, and he can never take off, not even to pee. And that's healing the rest of the wound and keeping the poison from shutting his body down or killing him. But he's angry, he's pissed off, he can't sleep, and even a Primarch needs sleep, but he is using it to he is using his new life to basically rebuild the Empire. So that's all pretty cool. And he's got an Eldar girlfriend. Isn't that waifu? I mean, nice. Next, we're nearing the end. Next, we've got the Big Guns Never Tire, which is the little blip to get you into the next battle. It's got a nice bit on terrain and deployment. Before long of deployment zones, you'll need to create a suitable battlefield. When setting up terrain for this mission, you will need to leave some space for vehicles to move across the battle map. Work together to create a battlefield that allows vehicles to move from point to point. It might sound counterintuitive. You might think, well, hang about, vehicles would have to fight wherever they want. Vehicles have to fight wherever they had to fight, and you wouldn't be able to rearrange scenery. But you've got to remember that some of these vehicles would be able to rearrange scenery quite easily by smashing through it, but you can't represent that by smashing your scenery. And B, if there was enough scenery the vehicles couldn't go through, they wouldn't engage in battle, because no tank driver wants to get stuck. Because the moment your tank's not moving, it isn't that difficult for somebody to sneak up with an explosive device or a grenade or a flamethrower or anything and make a mess of your tank. There are lots of ways to destroy tanks. And a lot of them are not nice. The general rule of thumb, as I've had it described to me by tankies, is you're almost you feel unkillable on the battlefield, but when something comes across that can kill you, you die in a horrible way. There's not much that can hurt you, but the stuff that can hurt you is very nasty. And if your tank can't move, you've got to remember that your basic marine is equipped with a crack grenade. A squad of 10 of them, just putting 10 crack grenades on the same door, whilst ducking low to avoid your fire arcs, could blow a hole in the door. At which point, the shrapnel from the door may shred you, and all they have to do is stand from around a corner, just firing their guns in, and all the bullets are going to bounce around, making a mess of whatever's inside. And tanks have limited arcs of firepower. There are big chunks of the tank where if you stood next to it, it couldn't fire. They make up for that by running you over and being big tanks. So, you know, if a tank can shoot down there, if a tank's got an arc of fire, say that's a tank and the arc of fire is there and you're standing here, you know, beneath the arc of fire where it can't shoot you, the tank's response will be to either run you over or back away so that the arc of fire can get you. If it's stuck, then it can't do either of those things. That's one of the reasons why you have pintle mounted weapons. You may think, oh, they look vulnerable, but they have the advantage they can lean right over and, you know, shoot down. And even then, they can't get everything. Not pintle mounted weapons. That's where you have top mounted weapons. But again, it's not uncommon for a tank catch driving up and a guy to shoot down like that. But yeah, a stationary tank becomes much more vulnerable, so they're going to pick places where they're not going to get forced into being stationary. And even if they can't get got by a person, a stationary tank is vulnerable to the big guns of artillery. You know, again, movement is essential to keeping a tank safe. It says, rolling off before deployment zones, both players must place 2 objective markers. These objective markers can be placed anywhere as long as the centre of each objective marker is more than 9 inches from the centre of another objective marker and 6 inches from the edge of the battlefield. So I've jumped a bit there. It says, work together to create a battlefield that allows vehicles to move from point to point while still providing some cover for your infantry model. So it is about providing balance and not providing too much of an advantage to one side. The place one piece of scenery in alternation can help there, and the changing battle sides. If you place one piece if you build scenery and then you roll off and the winner gets to choose which side to play from, it will discourage players from building a fortress around their side with a bunch of no man's land where they tanks and operate and they can shoot you, because they might not end up being on that side. There you go. There's the layout. They've been going for the edge on lengthways layout for most of the battles previously. Recently, both sides are attempting to gain control of no man's land between their lines. The attackers are being led by vehicles bristling with heavy weapons. For the attack to succeed, these big guns must seize key positions on the battlefield and crush the enemy's armour. Roll off and, starting with the winner, take turns placing the battle mats in the layout shown above. Remember to ensure that the terrain is placed in a way which allows vehicle models to move across the battlefield. As I said, you know, a good tank commander wouldn't go to battle in somewhere where he couldn't move. One player selects an army of Death Guard miniatures. The other player selects an army of Space Marine miniatures with a power rating of 60, which I think is the highest power rating we've had so far. Death Guard 3 command points, Space Marine 3 command points. Deployment players roll off and the winner chooses a deployment zone. There you go. Players then alternate deploying their units, starting with the player who chose their deployment zone. After all units have been deployed, the player who finished setting up their army first can choose to take the first or second turn. Victory conditions. Both players gain 3 victory points for each enemy vehicle destroyed, so that's cool. Remember, you have more than one vehicle. Control objective marker, 3 points. The first player to eliminate an enemy unit, 1 point. Enemy warlords slain, 1 point, and the game lasts 5 rounds. So you get points for eliminating an enemy unit. If that unit is a vehicle, you get 3 points on top of that, giving you a potential of 4 points for destroying a vehicle. But you don't get points for eliminating an enemy unit. You just get points for the first player to eliminate an enemy unit. So if you eliminate an infantry unit, you get 1 point for that being the first unit. But any infantry units you eliminate after that, you won't get any points for. You'll just get points for vehicles. So that's worth knowing. You can maybe put your vehicles at a little more risk. Okay. Here we have one of the bit. Here we have possibly the bit we've been waiting for in in the past 4 magazines. The actual stats for the repulsor. I'm aware I'm coming up to an hour here. This one was chock full of stuff, so sorry guys, it just took as long as it took. But I'm still going to go through the repulsor stats. Movement, it has this, as we've seen before, its movement's based on, it has a lot of stats based on, how many hull points the vehicle's got. So first off, I'm going to go through those stats. So at 9 to 16 wounds, which is 16 is what it starts with. You get a movement of 10, which is very nice. Ballistic skill of 3+, which is respectable, and armor of 6, attacks of 6, which is very nice. At 5 to 8, movement of 5, which is a big drop, so do be aware of that. Ballistic skill of 4, still respectable, but not as good as it could be. And D6 attacks, which is very variable because it's a D6. And at 1 to 4, you have a movement of 3 inches, so you're barely moving. Ballistic skill of 5+, so you're going to miss the majority of start hits. And 1 attack, so don't get into close combat. Right, now the stable stats are weapon skill of 6+, which it's a tank. You wouldn't expect it to have weapon skill. It doesn't have arms or anything. Strength of 8, which again, it's a tank. 8 strength is very strong, but probably even light for a tank. Toughness of 8, which is very respectable. Wounds of 16, which is very respectable. Leadership of 9, which is the Space Marines in it, what you'd expect. And a save of 3+. Again, it's well protected. A 3+ save is a respectable save, so that's not bad. So let's have a look at the weapons. You've got a Frag Storm Grenade Launcher. There are a lot of weapons. This is going to take a while. Frag Storm Grenade Launcher, range 18, assault D6, strength 4, AP 0, damage 1. So that does a lot of damage. That does damage to a lot of things, but doesn't do a lot of damage to them. The Heavy Onslaught Gatling Cannon, which has a range of 30 inches. Heavy 12, so again a lot of shots. Strength 5, AP -1, damage 1. A little better. Going to be good for taking out those slightly more heavily armoured troops. The Icarus Iron Hail Heavy Stubber, which has a range of 36. Heavy 3. Strength 4, AP -1, damage 1. Not bad with that AP -1. Strength 4. It's basically going to be a standard troop killer. In addition to that, it has the ability to add 1 to all hit rolls made for this weapon against targets that can fly. So it's a great anti-aircraft weapon. And subtract 1 from all hit rolls made from this weapon against other targets. You can't help feel, but they could have just lowered the... Oh no, yeah, because you're using the stat. You're using the ballistic skill of the vehicle. So yeah, I can see why they did that. So that's cool, yeah. Icarus Rocket Pod has strength 7, which is good. Sorry, heavy D3, strength 7, which is good, -1 AP and 1 damage. The heavy G3 is a bit more variable, but with that strength, you're probably going to do some damage to a vehicle. It has the same flight rules. These are obviously your anti-aircraft things, but they will work perfectly well against ground troops. Well, perfectly well. They work not as well against ground troops as they do against air troops, but they're still nasty weapons to use against ground troops if you want to. The Iron Hail Heavy Stubber, which has a range of 36, heavy 3, strength 4, AP -1, damage 1, which, yeah, you can see that's the same as the Icarus Iron Hail Heavy Stubber, but it doesn't have the disadvantage against ground troops or the advantage against air troops. So think about what you're going to use, and I'm pretty sure the physical representation of the gun on the model is the same, so you can just name it as to whichever one you want to use at the beginning of the game. Well, whichever one you use when you put your army together, rather. The Crackstorm Grenade Launcher, again, going to be very similar to the Iron Hail Heavy... going to be very similar to the Icarus Rocket. Oh no, that's different. So the Crackstorm Grenade Launcher has a range of 18, Assault 1, Strength 6, so good strength, -1 AP, and D3 damage. So you get 1 shot, you have potential of doing 3 damage on Strength 6. That's respectable, considering it's one amongst a plethora of weapons, and it's basically a crack grenade launcher. You've got the Las Talon, which is a range of 24, heavy 2, which is nice, strength 9, which is excellent, AP -3 and D6 damage. this thing is going to be doing a lot of killing for you. This one is very much looking like your preferred anti-vehicle weapon there. You're the Onslaught Gatling Gun, which is smaller than the heavy Onslaught Gatling Gun, unsurprisingly. It's heavy 6, strength 5, -1 AP and 1 damage. So the main difference here that we get between the heavy Onslaught and the standard Onslaught is that the heavy Onslaught has twice as many shots, but they're the same shots. Which, if I remember correctly, the picture of no, you don't have the picture. The picture of it is, it's the one with 2 Gatling guns next to each other as opposed to a single Gatling gun, so that makes sense. Storm Bolter, which is just your standard stick on the top weapon. Strength 24, no, range 24, rapid strength 24, that'd be amazing. Range 24. Rapid fire 2, strength 4, AP 0, damage 1. That's just a standard Storm Bolter. Nothing to write home about, but they're always worth having. It's an extra shot you wouldn't otherwise have. I always take a second Storm Bolter on my rhinos when I use them, because they're not that expensive, and yeah, it's 2 more shots. It might kill an orc, but 1 extra orc is good enough. Twin Heavy Bolter, range 36, heavy 6, strength 5, AP -1, damage 1, so very similar to the Onslaught Gatling Cannon, only with a better range. So if you have to make a choice between those two, the Heavy Bolter is better, but I'm pretty sure they're on different places. The Twin Las Cannon, which is frankly your baby. So the Las Cannon looks like it's going to be your tank killer. The Twin Las Cannon is also going to be your tank killer. Heavy 2, strength 9, AP 3, D6 damage. Again, it's a nasty weapon that does a lot of hurt. So yeah, if your intent is to have the repulsor being anti-tank, then these are the guys you want to be focusing on, your las cannons. Just going to go through the war gear options. This model may replace its twin heavy bolter with twin las cannon. This model may replace its heavy onslaught Gatling cannon with a las talon. This model may replace its iron hail heavy stubber with an onslaught Gatling cannon. This model may replace its 2 storm bolters with 2 frag-storm grenade launchers. So there was the frag-storm grenade launcher. Did I miss the frag-storm? Oh no, I didn't. The frag-storm was at the top. This model may replace its Icarus Iron Hail Heavy Stubber with an Icarus Rocket Pod, Storm Bolter, or frag-storm grenade launcher. This model may replace its auto launchers with 2 frag-storm grenade launchers. This model may take an additional Iron Hail Heavy Stubber, so that's pretty nasty as well. Abilities: heavy tank. Distances and ranges are always measured to and from this model's hull, even though it has a base. The rules tend to go, if something's got a base, you measure from the base. If something hasn't got a base, it's got a hull, you measure from the hull. They wanted this tank to hover, so they gave it a base. But because it's a vehicle, they're basically saying treat it like every other vehicle, measure from the hull. The reason for that is simply that a vehicle can turn for free. So when you turn, it changes the distances. That can lead to a sneaky thing of setting vehicles up sideways on the battle line, and then the moment the game begins, you turn the vehicle, you've got a few extra inches movement, which is cheesy as fuck, but totally legit. If your opponent does it, I'm pretty sure it's within the rules, and then you get to mock him relentlessly for the rest of his life. I have done it and did get mocked, and rightly so. I did it so I could try and storm my enemy in one turn because he was playing an incredibly tactical game and had done silly things to me before, like lining all his Imperial Guard models up 2 inches from each other along the back of the board, along the back and sides of the board, so that we couldn't do any outmaneuvering with our scouts. The bastard. That was an amazing battle. So many models. Repulsor field. Your opponent must subtract 2 from any charge rolls made for units that declare charge against this. If you've ever seen helicopters take off or land in the movies, you can see that because they push downwards with the rotor blades, it pushes things back and away from them. So basically that, but even more intense when you hit the repulsor field, because it isn't an anti-gravity field so much as a field physically pushing down against, wow, my chair's already, against the ground. You are affected by the repulsor field that pushes you back or slows you down a little bit. Power of the machine spirit. This model does not suffer the penalty to hit rolls for moving and firing heavy weapons, so that's amazing. That means you're getting to use it very much as a tank, even if it's transporting. Auto launchers. Instead of shooting any weapon in the shooting phase, this model may use auto launchers. Until your next shooting phase, your opponent must subtract 1 from all hit rolls for range weapons. So auto launchers, smoke launchers. Explodes! I like explosions. If this model is reduced to 0 wounds, roll a dice before removing the model from the battlefield. And before any embarked models disembark. On a 6, it explodes, and each unit within 6 inches suffers a D6 mortal wound. And yes, that includes the unit inside. It doesn't just explode outward. Transport. This model can transport 10 Ultramarine Primaris infantry models, each marked X Gravis model, so the big boys, take up the space of 2 models. It cannot transport jump-out models. So the guys in the Gravis armor, you can get 5 of them, and they come in squads of 3. 2 1/3 squad. 1 2/3 squads even. It comes with the keywords Imperium, Adeptus Astartes, and Ultramarines, as you expect. Obviously, Ultramarines is a chapter keyword, so it can be replaced with another chapter keyword. It just says Ultramarines here because this whole magazine is running you as Ultramarines. And as the keywords vehicle, transport, fly, and repulsor, as you'd expect from a flying vehicle that transports people, called the repulsor tank. We have a new back page. Your local stores. Basically, it's trying to encourage you to go into your local game stores, game store, play games, and buy stuff in an attempt to keep you on as a customer. I totally recommend doing this because that's how you keep having more fun, by having cooler new models and cooler new people to play. But you don't just have to go into your local GW store. There are a lot of friendly local gaming stores. Frankly, I've always preferred them to the GWs. That's not anything against the GW stores. I've never been into a bad GW store. It's just GW stores are geared towards getting you started and selling you things, whereas friendly local gaming stores tend to be more geared towards retaining customers. And so they tend to have more gaming areas, and usually more bits and pieces, and staff that are happy to just let you game. Whereas a lot of the staff in GW stores, whilst they are happy to let you game, it is their job to sell you things. You know, it's literally their job. You know, their job is to sell you stuff. Now, whilst a friendly local gaming store has this, they can often do it in other ways. For example, my friendly local gaming store, which is a Fistful of Dice in Portsmouth, I totally recommend you check them out. They sell all kinds of snacks, crisps, chocolate bars, pot noodles, and things like that you can eat whilst gaming. They sell tea, they sell coffee, they sell fizzy drinks, and they charge for gaming tables. Now, some people may think, oh, I don't like it when they charge for gaming tables, but that's how they make money off you without constantly bugging you, going, buy this thing, buy this thing, buy this thing. And a lot of shops that have had that relaxed attitude, but without making money off it in some way, have fallen down and gone. You know, so if we want these local shops, we have to pay for them. You vote with your wallet on the high street above all else. You know, saying, oh, I love this shop and this shop is great. If you're not spending money in it, then it's not great. You know, if it's a shop that you don't want to spend money in, then it goes, and that's how it works. That's how it's supposed to work. If you can't find a way to make it work, then obviously it wasn't popular enough to justify it. At the same time, There's a lot of competition and there's a lot of brand loyalty. So look at your local model shops, look at your local gaming shops, support them however you can and get the most from them that you can. And there are loads of shops out there. If you're in Wales, go to Cardiff. Firestorm Games is amazing. If you're in London, Wayland Games has a big gaming area that's supposed to be pretty awesome. There's loads and loads of stuff all up and down the country. And if you don't have one locally and you think you need one locally, make one. There are all kinds of websites that can help you and offer you advice on building businesses. There are government schemes that can lend you money at preferential rates because they want small to medium enterprises to start. Check it out. It really isn't that hard. I built a gaming shop. It then didn't work out for me because I have a family that I needed to deal with. My wife has some problems that I need to help her with. And various other things, but the shop itself is still going strong with Carl and Dave, who the two guys are set up with, great guys. And it really isn't that difficult. It is, making it permanently succeed, that's the difficult bit. But building it to begin with, it's hard work, but it is very rewarding. I always say if you haven't got something in your local area, or if something's not happening you think should be happening, go out and do it. Worst case scenario, you fall on your face, you pick yourself up, you start again. Okay, on to the final page. For the last two issues, we're going to be getting the larger piece of scenery. Nice big platforms there. As I said in the previous thing, when you get this and build it, you might want to mount it on some card or a sheet of wood, just to protect the ladders and that, simply because they are thin bits of plastic coming off and they are breakable. But issue 79 covers the Magnavent Walkway Part 1, discover the Death Guard Defilers, which is nice, and learn the 3 ways to play. Issue 80, which is the last issue, which is sad. Your final conquest, the Magnavent Walkway Part 2, and the Battle for Corvan 2 ends. It's kind of melancholy, really. Hope you guys enjoyed this, and I'll see you in the next couple of weeks. I'm doing a similar series on the Age of Sigmar Mortal Realms, so feel free to watch that if you want to keep watching my stuff. It's been a crazy ride, and frankly, if you've enjoyed it half as much as I have, then I've enjoyed it twice as much as you have. Finally, I've got these 2 bits and bobs. I sent pokes out to the guys that won them, but didn't get any responses. So I've repoked you guys. It's Thander Chaos Champion and the Chaos Tally person. If you don't respond, then I'll give them away in the last episode. Okay, you know who you are. You've been poked in messages, and I will see you guys next week. Bye-bye. Hi guys, hope you enjoyed that video, and if you did, remember to like and subscribe to my channel. I'm also on Facebook and Twitter. Not sure why, but I am. So if you like it, see me there, and please tell your friends. Thanks very much. Bye.